Okay, let's dive in. Today, we are wrestling with what is perhaps the greatest paradox of the human mind, memory.
It really is. I mean, every self-help book, every piece of advice, it all focuses on how to remember better.
Right. We're taught to fear the loss of information, the decay, the failure.
But the mission of this deep dive is to completely flip that script for you. We're looking at a huge shift in cognitive neuroscience.
The shift where forgetting isn't seen as a glitch or a passive failure.
Not at all. It's a highly regulated, active, and frankly, an absolutely essential process for peak cognitive function. Your brain is actively pruning, deleting, and suppressing old memories.
Make room for new ones.
Exactly. Forgetting is really the unsung hero of brain efficiency.
So to understand that, we should probably anchor ourselves in the basics. How is a memory made in the first place?
It's a three-step process, really. You've got encoding, storage, and then retrieval.
And encoding, that's all about neuroplasticity, right?
Yeah.
Strengthening connections.
Precisely. We call it long-term potentiation, or LTP. It happens mainly in the hippocampus, and it's the biological mechanism that basically shouts, this connection is important, keep it.
Okay, so if LTP is the accelerator that creates memories, the core idea here is that if we only had accelerators, the whole system would just crash.
It'd immediately crash. If every single connection you made was permanently strengthened, your neural network would quickly hit what scientists call a synaptic saturation ceiling.
It would just be noise.
Complete noise. So cluttered, you'd lose the ability to encode new information. Active forgetting is the management system. It's adaptive filtering.
So if forgetting is actually a success, let's first talk about when we feel like it's failing. Psychologically, we used to have these three buckets for memory failure. How does modern neuroscience sort of refine those old ideas?
Well, we can start right at the beginning with encoding failure. This just means the memory was never truly formed in the first place.
The information came in, but it didn't stick.
Right. It wasn't successfully transformed into a stable, storable representation. And the most common culprit for that.
It has to be distraction, lack of attention.
That's the absolute key. If you aren't paying attention, the cognitive resources needed for deep processing just get diverted. We know emotion plays a huge role here, too. The amygdala flags emotionally important events.
Which is why I remember exactly where I was for certain big world events, but I have no idea what I had for lunch on Tuesday.
Exactly. But, it's a double-edged sword. While a big emotional event gets stamped in, high negative stress or anxiety can actually interfere with encoding. The stress just hijacks the system.
Okay, so let's say we do encode it. Sometimes we still can't find it. That's retrieval failure, right? The tip of the tongue feeling.
The most frustrating one. The memory is definitely in there. It's available, but for some reason, it's inaccessible. You know it. You just can't pull up the file.
And there's a principle that explains this.
There is. It's called the encoding specificity principle. It basically says that for a cue to help you recall something, that same cue has to have been there when you first learned it.
So the environment, or even our mood, gets tagged to the memory.
It does. It can be external, like being in the same room where you studied for a test, or internal, like your physiological state.
Yeah.
It's wild how specific this can get. The sources we looked at mentioned an experiment with grasshoppers.
Grasshoppers.
Yeah. Researchers found that putting them back into a low nutritional state, basically making them hungry again, triggered specific learned decisions they had made before when they were hungry.
Wait, so the physical feeling of hunger itself was the retrieval key?
The hunger acted as the key to unlock a specific behavioral memory. It shows just how deeply your body's physical context is woven into the memory itself. Your body is part of the filing system.
Wow. Okay, so the third classic failure is interference theory. This is about memories competing with each other.
Right. You have two main types. Proactive interference is when older memories disrupt your ability to learn new things.
And retroactive interference is the other way around.
Yep, and it's often stronger. That's when newer memories disrupt your recall of older ones. If you learned French years ago and now learning Spanish makes it hard to remember your French verbs, that's retroactive interference.
The new learning is messing with the old file.
Exactly. And the neuroscience here is really cool. It's not just a scramble. We know the prefrontal cortex, the PFC, tries to manage this competition, but new research suggests interference is really a failure of segregation.
A failure of segregation, what does that mean?
It means the brain fails to keep independent memories separate. It accidentally creates a bridge between two memories that should have stayed in their own folders. So it's not just too many files, it's that the filing system itself has incorrectly linked them.
That makes perfect sense. So if the brain is fighting interference, it must be actively regulating things. Let's shift from failures of access to, well, to active biological deletion. What are the core mechanisms designed to literally erase information?
This is where we get to the biological counterforce to LTP. It's called long-term depression, or LTD.
So if LTP strengthens a connection, LTD weakens it.
Precisely. It's an experience-dependent reduction in synaptic strength. It's absolutely necessary to prevent the network from getting oversaturated with information.
What's happening inside the neuron? Was it just fading?
Oh, it's much more active than that. It's physical demolition. LTD involves selectively removing or modifying receptors, like AMPA receptors, from the synapse. By physically pulling those receptors out, you are weakening the connection. It's a biological edit.
Okay, that's at the tiny cellular level. What about the big picture, the network architecture? That's synaptic pruning, I assume.
That's the architectural necessity. Pruning is like system-wide maintenance. It operates on a much larger scale, selectively eliminating inefficient or redundant connections that aren't used often. Think of it like a gardener pruning a rose bush to encourage strong, healthy growth.
You're clearing out the dead wood to make room for new branches.
You are. And the implication is huge. By removing that unneeded wiring, the brain saves a massive amount of energy and frees up capacity for new, original ideas. Forgetting is essential for getting smarter.
It's so different from how we think about computer memory, which just passively degrades.
Completely different. That's passive failure, like data corruption on a hard drive. Biological forgetting is the opposite. It's active, selective, and adaptive erasure, designed to ensure the whole system can last a lifetime.
This leads to the most mind-blowing idea for me, the discovery of targeted erasure. Like, the brain has a molecular demolition crew.
It does. The search for forgetting cells has found that certain dopamine signals can trigger active forgetting through specific pathways. This involves a protein that activates something called cofulin.
And what does cofulin do?
Cofulin is the demolition worker. It remodels the actin cytoskeleton, the physical scaffolding that gives the cell its shape. By doing that, it physically mediates erasure within the memory cell, the enneagram. The brain isn't just hoping a memory fades.
It's sending a signal to physically tear down the connection.
It is, and this continues while we sleep. Molecular factors build up during sleep that drive this synaptic downscaling. It's like a nightly cleanup crew that reduces the noise from the day so the network is optimized for learning tomorrow.
This all ties into how the brain organizes memory over the long term. Let's talk about systems consolidation.
Right. Systems consolidation is that slow, dynamic process where memories migrate from their temporary home in the hippocampus to the neocortex for permanent storage. And when I say slow, I mean it. This can take up to a decade or two in humans for some memories.
And sleep is the prime time for this process.
Sleep is the neurological quality control system. It's when synaptic downselection happens. The brain replays the important stuff from the day, transfers the essential core of the memory to the cortex, and actively prunes away all the trivial details.
It's deciding what's part of the story and what's just background noise. Now, there's a key concept here, reconsolidation. Why is it so important that when we retrieve a memory, it becomes fragile again?
That temporary fragility is a huge opportunity for therapy. When a stable memory, like a phobia or a traumatic event, is retrieved, it enters this vulnerable state for a short time.
And in that state, you can change it.
You can. You can actively strengthen it or, more importantly, weaken it before it gets filed away again.
So for someone with PTSD, a therapist could help them retrieve that traumatic memory and then use specific techniques to update or weaken its emotional charge before the brain resaves it.
That's exactly the idea. Understanding reconsolidation gives clinicians a precise window to edit these powerful maladaptive memories. It's a game changer.
It all comes back to that adaptive imperative. Forgetting is an evolutionary advantage.
Absolutely. If a world changes, your memory has to change with it. Forgetting that a water source is now dangerous is, well, it's a fatal error. We see the cost of failing to forget in PTSD, where the brain can't update its danger assessment.
And this isn't all happening automatically. We have some conscious control, which is called motivated forgetting.
We do. This is top-down, deliberate control over what you access.
And how does the brain do that? Where's the suppress button?
It's in the lateral prefrontal cortex, the PFC. It acts like a command center, sending inhibitory signals to suppress activity in the hippocampus. You are literally using your frontal lobe to block access to memories you don't want to think about.
It's so important to clarify here. This is conscious suppression, which has a lot of neurobiological evidence. It's not the same as the old psychoanalytic idea of unconscious repression.
Absolutely not. We have strong evidence for willful suppression, the active avoidance of a thought. Repression, the idea of the brain automatically and unconsciously blocking trauma, is still a very controversial idea with little scientific support. The evidence points to suppression.
So if that's all normal, adaptive forgetting, what does a catastrophic failure of the system look like? Let's touch on pathological forgetting, or amnesia.
Right. Organic amnesia comes from actual structural damage to those memory regions. You've got two main types. Anterograde amnesia is the inability to form new memories after an injury.
The famous case of patient HM.
Exactly. A failure of encoding linked to damage in the hippocampus. Then there's retrograde amnesia, which is the loss of old memories formed before the injury. This affects the established memories in the neocortex.
What causes this kind of damage?
Anything from head injuries and strokes to infections, or even severe vitamin B1 deficiency in a condition called Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome.
There's also a really bizarre one called transient global amnesia, or TGA.
It's incredibly alarming to witness, but it's usually harmless. It's a short-lived state, less than 24 hours, of sudden, total amnesia. The person is alert, but they're stuck in a loop, asking the same questions over and over because their brain's record button is temporarily switched off.
And it's more of a functional glitch than permanent damage.
It seems to be.
Huh.
The triggers are things like intense physical exertion, sudden immersion in cold water, or extreme emotional upset. It suggests the system is sensitive to a sort of functional disruption, like a brief power surge, not a hardware failure.
And finally, what about dissociative amnesia?
That's a psychogenic condition, so it stems from severe trauma. The memory loss there is usually autobiographical, and it's thought to be the brain's attempt to protect the individual by disrupting the normal integration of consciousness and memory. It's a defense mechanism.
This has been a true deep dive.
Yeah.
So to bring it all together, normal forgetting is this active, multi-level process. You have LTD at the synapse, down selection during sleep, top-down suppression from the PFC.
And it's all built for longevity and adaptability. That understanding has transformed how we can approach clinical treatment. Grasping reconsolidation gives us powerful new therapeutic targets for everything from anxiety to PTSD.
So what are the big questions that are still out there?
Well, we still need to nail down the exact neurological basis of TGA. And we're still fine-tuning the specific roles of REM versus non-REM sleep and how we process emotional memories. The more we learn, the better we can optimize both learning and therapy.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. We started by saying that forgetting is actively driven by the need to adapt and be efficient. It's how the brain makes sure there's room for new skills. So we have to ask, when you're faced with today's insane information overload, are the forgetting mechanisms we have enough? Or are we sometimes too quick to restrict new information, thinking we're protecting our memory, when in fact that premature filtering just leads to suboptimal learning? Food for thought as you navigate your own information stream.